Alright, House of Payne fans, hope everybody's doing well. This will be my review for Season 10, Episode 16, entitled Painfully Honest. Now, I'm conflicted here because, believe it or not, I want to give this episode a 10 out of 10. I thought it was very good from start to finish. While there were moments where I felt like Miranda was being annoying as crap, and trust and believe, the promo actually depicted her out to be a monster. But when you look at the episode as a whole, I can actually see where Calvin slipped up. But they did reconcile at the end of the episode. But if you know that the synopsis for episode 18 is a bit, oh crap, here we go again with Miranda. It's like they reconcile at the end, but then you look forward to like episode 18 coming up on December 14th. It's like, here we go again with Miranda. But I will admit, in that episode, A Little Discipline, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Laura, disciplines Christian, and then that sets Miranda off. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's probably Laura spanking him or something like that. And then, of course, Miranda's going to go off because I believe Laura is watching the kids by herself. So we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. But I'm only going to score this episode based on this particular episode, not 2 episodes down the road. It should be like maybe a 9 because there was a lot of heavy lore, but in regards to the history of Curtis and Ella, but Curtis wasn't even in the episode. There are a lot of fans online who have been saying this for a few weeks. I mean, at this point, you ought to just put Floyd and Ella together just because of the fact that there are so many roles he fills that it's like, okay, at this point, he's literally Ella's stand-in husband. I mean, if Curtis isn't there, Curtis isn't there. But I will admit, this was a sweet episode, even though it had its rough patches here and there. So I'll admit, I will give it a 10 out of 10. I will. So before moving forward in the video, please take a moment to hit the thumbs up button to show you like it. Hit subscribe. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. This morning, I woke up December 1st. We have now crossed 190,000 subscribers, meaning that we need 10,000 more to hit 200,000. So I cannot thank you all enough. The channel is booming once again, and I could not be happier. So please, if you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed, there's a variety of shows for me to review on the channel. So if House of Payne isn't your cup of tea, maybe you love Sisters, The Oval, The Game, The Wonder Years, trust there's a variety. It isn't just Tyler Perry anymore. There's a lot of other shows that I will be reviewing. So hit subscribe. Let's hit 200K soon. Hit that bell icon and select all. That way you keep yourself notified and you know when I post content on the channel. And follow me on social media. Links are in the description box below. So the story is split 2 ways. Well, actually, this first scene establishes both storylines of the episode. So you got Calvin and Floyd in the kitchen. I think Ella's serving them like some coffee cake. And they pretty much, check in. Well, Ella's checking in to see, so, Calvin, how are things? Oh, yeah, I'm doing good. We actually signed, a big client at work. No, about the whole thing with co-parenting. Oh, yeah, well, divorce. I'm trying to make it, one day at a time. It's a lot going on I didn't know about. And he actually gets distracted because Ella says that the kids, Christian and Calvin Jr., are in the back room messing stuff up. So he runs out. And it seems like, Ella is being extra nurturing and thoughtful to Calvin, like giving him the last slice of cake, even though she was about to eat it because he went through a divorce. So she knows that things are a bit messy. So I guess, and I could be wrong, but the way I interpreted it, it seems like the divorce is already finalized, even though, to be honest, I thought it was finalized way back in season 9, at least towards the back half of the season, because, and like I said before, I know I'm not an expert in this stuff. Are you able to like get engaged to somebody if you're currently going through a divorce? It's kind of like, I know that you probably can't get officially married to another person while you're still in the divorce process with your soon-to-be ex-spouse. So I'm going to say that maybe things are officially finalized now, and maybe when Calvin proposed to Laura, that was when the divorce was still going through. but they weren't going to get married until after the divorce had been finalized. But based on a lot of dialogue and things like that, I guess it is safe to assume that yes, the divorce is officially finalized and they're working through the first steps of co-parenting, which, to be honest, weren't they doing that before? But no need to harp on that. So while Calvin's in the back taking care of the kids, he gets back and they just talk about, you know, divorce in general. You know, he's been through a lot through the divorce, and Floyd mentions the fact that, you know, you're not the first man to go through it. I mean, it could happen to anybody. And while he was gone, they actually got some chunks of the cake. And trust and believe in a family, I can relate to that. So we go over to, well, actually not the next scene. Calvin says that he's trying to make it through the divorce as smoothly as possible. Laura had the idea of a schedule in order to, you know, hopefully alleviate the co-parenting situation. Floyd actually says, do not bring up your new woman to your old one. And Ella says, well, Miranda's just going to have to accept the fact that Calvin's with Laura now. And to hear Ella say that is so refreshing, given how, earlier this season and mainly last season, she was like Team Miranda and Calvin, because even Floyd brings up the fact, like, you're not thinking about, getting back together with her, are you? It's like, no, it's not that at all. So I'm glad it's kind of addressed in universe about Calvin going back to her, but that doesn't seem to be the case at all. Now, he says that he'll talk about Miranda, about the whole schedule thing, but he'll leave Laura out of it. Floyd is like, good man. Ella's like, what? Basically because it's like, eventually it's going to come out. And I will admit, I think Floyd brought up a good point about not bringing up your new person or your new significant other to your old one. But then Ella also had a good point, because let's say, because we know how things play out eventually, but let's say that he didn't bring up the schedule idea being Laura's to Miranda, and things are going well. Let's say maybe 3 months down the line, everybody meets up to, hey, I'm dropping off the kids. Okay, great. And then Laura's like, well, I'm glad the schedule idea turned out great. And then Miranda's like, yeah, Calvin did good. Well, actually, it was my idea. Wait, what? And then everything will fall apart. So, with this being new, and they're seemingly on good terms, because when Miranda comes over to the loft, I saw a lot of people online saying the same thing. Miranda, because Calvin's like, oh, wow, you going to church? Wait, it's Tuesday, Calvin. Oh, no, I was just saying, you look nice. You look good. It's like, oh, yeah, I got to look good for my baby. Excuse me. Christian, some days I'm the soccer mom. Other days I'm the hot mom. Nah, Miranda knew what she was doing. So he wanted to talk a little bit about the schedule. Like, hey, is it okay if I had the soccer days? Oh, no, I love having the soccer games with my baby, because I love how he, hits the ball with his head and whatnot. And he was thinking more the lines of, oh, we're not going separately. No, we're going to the games together. That's what co-parenting is. But yeah, I don't want to confuse our son like we're getting back together. Well, no, I explained to him everything and told him that me and daddy aren't getting back together, but we're going to be there to support him regardless. And to be honest, it felt like, if you watch this episode, line for line, it felt like the roles were reversed. Usually it's Miranda saying, well, no, we're not going to do this together because of the fact that it will confuse our son and he hasn't processed this. And then Calvin's the one who's kind of like, well, hey, maybe we should do things together. Like, I want our son to do things with me and Laura and whatnot. So it really felt like this episode was reversed, except, in both scenarios, it's always Miranda who gets triggered and goes off. So he pulls out the schedule and she's impressed, but then asks what the LD days are, and those are Laura days. And, he admits that it was her idea. And, Miranda was really soaking it in, and Calvin should have milked it for what it was worth. But then he slipped up, mentioned it was Laura. She gets pissed and runs off. So we go over. No, actually, she gets pissed and then we switch over. And Floyd is in the living room and sniffs out a massive, delicious smell. And Ella's fixing up a big dinner. Essentially, this is all about making sure that there's more intimacy in their relationship and their marriage in order to nurture their marriage. And Floyd will be their server at night, midnight. And there's like a card game about learning love languages. All right, so Miranda and Calvin discussed the co-parenting strategies that, and I actually liked what was going on here, because more often than not, parents raise their kids the way they were raised. And However, they don't really tweak things. Some people just don't want to recognize when they're screwed up, and then they pass it on to their kids. Trust me, I can relate. But essentially, I love that Miranda was actually open to what Calvin said about how, look, Miranda, isn't it best to try to raise our child? I mean, at this point, I guess Tracy is like unceremoniously written out of continuity, because the way that Miranda and Calvin talk, it's like, you know, Christian and Calvin Jr. are their sons. So, okay, whatever. So essentially, he's like, look, does it matter where the source comes from or what the source is, so long as we're raising our kids right? Okay, sure, fair. So she was actually open to hearing what Laura had to say. And I love the fact that even though Miranda throws out the homewrecker line, Calvin pretty much squashed that right then and there, which I'm glad, because typically, if this was Miranda from earlier episodes, as soon as she mentioned homewrecker, oh, so you're defending her now, she would have left. But I love the fact that Miranda did stay for a little bit in order to hear what Calvin had to say. Now, she lashes out, though, because it seems like she's being attacked for her parenting style. Now, I think it's two things. When you look at it from the context of Miranda, I feel like knowing that Calvin's suggestions about Christian playing football instead of soccer, or staying up late instead of having a strict bedtime so he can learn the consequences of that, since she knows these come from Laura, she's going to get pissed off, considering this is the woman who stole my man and stole my marriage, and now she's trying to, tell me how to raise my child with Calvin. Hell no, I don't want to hear it. Now, let's say it was another source, like, let's say a professional help book, or maybe even Ella, I don't know. I think Miranda would have been more open to listening to what Calvin had to say. So I will admit, I don't think Miranda should have stormed off the way she did, especially when she took things so far by saying they can both go to hell. But I think that if you look at it from her perspective, I understand. Let me put it this way. That's another reason why I gave this episode a 10 out of 10. Because I actually understood why Miranda was lashing out. It wasn't just a simple, oh, she just wants Calvin back. No, you could actually tell that her feelings were actually justified, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Calvin is doing one hell of a job trying to make the best out of a difficult situation so all parties win. However, Miranda doesn't see it that way. But also, from the Miranda, me looking at Calvin, it's like, bro, you and Miranda are finally getting things working with the co-parenting thing and the wounds of the Laura betrayal. And I'm not saying that Laura betrayed Miranda, but in terms of Calvin knowing what's going to trigger and set off Miranda, maybe it's not best to bring her up so soon. That much I can agree with Floyd. Told the truth there. So let me just skip over to the next scene. What I'll do, I'll talk about the last scene between Calvin and Miranda, and then I'll go over to the Floyd and Ella stuff, and we can wrap up this video because, like I said, this was a pretty good episode. So eventually Miranda comes out of the back, he's like, let me come get Christian. Basically she goes check on him, but then comes back out, and they both have cooled down and apologized, and she's like, okay, you can go first. Calvin, apologizes for, yelling at her, but to be honest, I don't think Calvin yelled first. It felt like, he raised his voice when Miranda was starting to become bent out of shape. But, Calvin always has to be wrong, and Calvin always has to apologize, blah, blah. And he does, say, look, you're a great mom, but, we just got to start working together to raise these boys. And Miranda agrees. And I'm like, this was a good conclusion to this particular scene. And to be honest, I know that this episode needed the quote-unquote drama, and this is where the drama stemmed from, Miranda blowing up. So she then jokingly says, well, hey, I actually told the boys about your suggestion about staying up late, so you get Calvin Jr. and Christian to stay up all night, and you deal with it the next day. Wow, okay, you really gonna do me like that? It's called parenting. So that was a cute way to end it, but I just hope that as things go on, these two can really get together, not in terms of romantic, getting together, but being the best co-parents they can. Because let's be honest here, it wouldn't surprise me if the show goes for like another 3 seasons. Laura will have a baby, and then it's 3, and it's like, oh hell. So we go over to the dinner, and Ella said midnight, so I'm just going to assume it's midnight right now. And Curtis never showed up. And she tells Floyd that the dinner was based on what he said to Calvin about how divorce can happen to anyone. But I believe it takes two people to keep a marriage together. And that's completely justified. You know, I get it. Like, basically, if you're the person who is carrying the weight of the marriage alone and you feel alone, then it's most likely going to end a divorce. So it almost felt like she took what Floyd said to heart and wanted to prove him wrong. But it wasn't even him talking about her and Curtis. But when she reveals later on about how she did want to leave at one time, that's probably what triggered her. So from there, they actually sit on the couch and played a card game about love intimacy. And, you know, Floyd's like, okay, when did you first fall in love with Curtis? Apparently, it was their first, like, date or first meeting, or, you know, the first time they met at the first night of the county fair. He spent $35 trying to win her a stuffed alligator. And then the next card is like, have you ever considered ending things? Oh, well, I know the answer to that. Well, actually, don't skip it. I actually did. Wait, what? So she explains that after Calvin was born, she felt like alone and tired all the time because, you know, Curtis would be off at work all day and I'll be at home, you know, taking care of the house, taking care of our child. And, you know, Floyd is like, well, yeah, you know, Ella being a firefighter is a hard work. And, you know, I remember those days when Curtis would, you know, just be out of it. He wouldn't be able to hang out with anybody. He would just be exhausted. And yeah, you know, it just felt like he would come home, he would be zoned out, he would watch the TV. Some nights I just wanted to slap the remote out of his hand because I'll be there exhausted and holding the baby, and I'll be, you know, just feeling so alone. And one night I just went off on him, and then I went to bed because I thought I was going to leave him. I'm going to leave this man, I'm done. But she woke up like at 2 a.m. and then found that Curtis had, you know, the baby in the rocking chair and said, don't worry about it, you go get some sleep, I'll take care of our son. And he even did some laundry. And then after that, she never looked back because she just didn't want to feel alone in her marriage. And that was pretty nice. I mean, Floyd just reassures her, you know, Curtis, if he plays his game with you, he's competitive, so he's going to win. But regardless, I think you're both winners. And then at the end, we got a comedic scene where Floyd is rushing through the house because he met somebody saying, she even looks like my mom, she has all of her front teeth, my love language is pot roast. Can I borrow the cards? Sure. And it's like, oh, where's Curtis? He's asleep. Oh, yeah, you must have put him on him to make him go to sleep. I sure did. And that was a funny way to end the episode. But I did love this episode. I really did. But like I said, Curtis needed to be here. I mean, don't tease him if he's not going to be in the episode. Because like I said at the beginning of the video, at this point, hell, why don't you make Floyd the husband? I mean, from him just being in love with Ella's cooking and whatnot, you would almost think that, hell, he might be the new Curtis at some point. But like I said, with the Miranda stuff, I could actually see where she would be bent out of shape because Calvin should have known better. Like, I get it. Miranda needs to accept him moving on and Laura being a part of their child's life will actually be a reality, but ease into it. It's like she was saying a few episodes, what was it ago, Bearer of Bad News, episode 11, baby steps, Calvin. It's like, you're ready to move and do this and that. I'm not, so we need to take it slow. And you could tell that it wasn't about, you know, Christian being confused and processing it. It definitely felt like Miranda wasn't ready to accept this stuff. But I will admit, yeah, Calvin, or should I say Laura, has some excellent ideas, but Calvin should have eased into it. So there you go. But yeah, do you agree with my score, 10 out of 10? Like I said, if it was going to be like maybe a 9 or an 8, I would have took off a point for Curtis not being here for such a big episode about his marriage to Ella, and then possibly Miranda like telling them to go to hell, that kind of stuff. But I enjoyed it. Let me know your 2 cents. If you want to donate to the channel, feel free to do so on PayPal or Cash App. But at the very least, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one.